Some parents are naturally structured, some are naturally protective. Neither is automatically right. Kids actually benefit from both structure and warmth. Welcome to the Dad Central Show, the podcast that helps overwhelmed dads conquer stress, build confidence, and become the father their family brags about. Join Drew Solon, a leadership coach and father of 5, and Ed Gow Jr., a fatherhood advocate and contributor to the Good Men Project, as we guide you through the journey of fatherhood. We'll show you how to connect deeply with your family, manage your time and energy better, and master tools to become the dad you want to be. Let's get started. Did you know that research shows that parents who disagree about parenting in front of their kids can increase the child's stress and behavior problems? But when parents show unity, kids feel safer and more confident. So what do you do when you and your partner genuinely see things differently? So let's set the stage. Parenting rarely comes with a perfect agreement. One parent may be stricter, the other more relaxed. One values independence, the other structure. The challenge isn't whether parents disagree. It's whether they can still function as a team. So today we're talking about how dads and partners can build unity even when parenting styles don't match. So let's realize that kids don't need perfect parents. They need parents who work together. Unity in parenting doesn't mean always agreeing. It means respecting each other, communicating well, and presenting a consistent foundation for your kids. So today you are watching Dad Central, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. And we're going to be talking about today parenting as a team, how to build unity even when you see things differently. And also our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes care is the best of a man because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So we are hanging out with Drew today, and Drew is not at his usual locale today. So Drew, you're on the road.
Yeah, and on the road today, just spending some time in Toronto. I got some family stuff happening, so just want to be here to support and make sure that we can connect where we need to connect.
Excellent. And before we get into our conversation, a few things. As always, wherever you're watching or listening to this, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We know that there are a lot of people who watch and don't subscribe. Why not? And also, we want to have you send in questions about fatherhood to our shows. Please email your questions to podcast@dadcentral.ca, and we'll answer them live. We're excited to answer them live. So, Drew, parenting as a team, how to build unity even when you see things differently. For those who are watching on video, you see this, but audio, Drew is just shaking his head a little bit. So, Drew, what are your thoughts before we get in on this conversation today?
Well, we have these conversations for a reason. To me, this is one of the most important aspects of parenting. And we're going to talk, obviously, about some of the research behind why this is so important, the outcomes for our kids, but also just thinking of life in a family and wanting it to be as smooth or as enjoyable or as healthy as it can be. And to me, there isn't an area that can have a significant impact on that anymore than this right here. And, of every family situation is a little bit different, right? So some families, they're no longer together as a parent. And so maybe it's single dads or you've gone through some various things. So we're not just speaking to, the nuclear family. We're speaking to anyone who has, kids essentially, because it's about them. And so working, even when you are not together, working as co-parents is equally as maybe even more so important because the family structure isn't around the kids to support them in those other ways. So to me, it's so vital for every parent. So it's a really good conversation.
Excellent. So we're going to cover today why parenting matters, backed by some research. We're also going to talk about why parents see things differently. Then we're going to get into, because there's so much to talk about this, there is a lot. We're also going to chat about a message for dads and also how parents build unity. So Drew, let's kick it off. First things first, why parenting unity matters?
Well, I guess we can start with the research. So, research around the whole family psychology say that, and especially around developmental psychology, show that when parents support each other in their parenting, children have fewer behavioral problems, kids experience less anxiety, they develop stronger emotional security. And so to me, I mean, those in itself are just powerful and important. I think the reality is that it also creates just a healthier home atmosphere when the two leaders of the family are working well. If you extrapolate that to a, let's say, a working situation, if you have, let's say, a leader or two that are, relative similar seniority, but there's a feud between them, what are the ripple effects in the organization and in terms of the morale within the teams, or even the conflicts that even emerge within that unit where it has these two different leaders? And so anywhere you look at it, again, based on a leadership lens, when there isn't unity, there's often more conflict and more stress for everyone around, especially those who are under the leader. So from that perspective, it just makes sense, right? You as parents are responsible for the atmosphere and the leadership of that family and that home. And so, that those are some of the outcomes when there isn't that unity together. Now, we're also want to be clear, the unity doesn't necessarily mean like you agree all the time. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being unified in how you present and how you run things in the family together. And the reason why is, when parents undermine each other, it's kind of like leaders undermine each other. What happens often is that the kids, they play parents off against each other. And this happens especially in families that have gone through separation or divorced, right? There's multiple homes, multiple people involved, easier to do that. Also, discipline often becomes inconsistent. Oh, I can go to mom and she's going to be one way, and if I go to dad, he's going to be another way. So they'll just kind of play off of each other. Often what happens though is, in between the parents, conflict tends to increase, or sometimes the conflict between a parent and child or children often increases too if you see these types of parents undermining each other. And so, like, that conflict always increases stress, and nobody wants that type of thing to happen. I mean, look, having gone through, obviously a family breakdown, having now been in a blended family, and of course, having for a season been a single dad and having to navigate that dynamic with my kids in the two different platforms, like I've gone through what I would say is a fair amount of this. And I think everything that I've experienced lines up with exactly what the research says. So from my lived experience, I see exactly that. And of course, from the research, it seems pretty clear. But I think an important thing we want to share is that kids don't need parents, as I mentioned before, who always agree. They need parents who really respect each other, no matter what the family structure looks like, whether you're still together or whether you're not together. And so I think that's really the biggest thing. You can disagree as long as you disagree respectfully and present in a healthy way to the children. That's much better than having open, clear division, which is really unhealthy. And the goal is to try and minimize that as much as possible.
Excellent. Let's move to our next point: why parents see things differently.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably run a very long list of
Yes.
why that might be, but we're going
Yes.
to focus, I guess, on three main areas, so three main differences. And again, I think I've lived this out as well. So, number one is your upbringing. We often parent based on what we've experienced growing up. That's common, makes sense. Like one parent could be like, look, my parents were strict and I turned out fine. And I think that's one of the things that why it's so important to be strict as well. The other might say, well, I want to be more open and flexible than my parents were. I had really strict parents and I hated it and I always rebelled. And so their goal is to be almost the opposite. Both perspectives really do make sense. It's just a matter of how do you navigate that. But so your upbringing and your differences are a main reason why you'd see things differently, right? Also, there can be what we'll call personality differences. And this, some parents are naturally maybe more structured, maybe more protective, maybe more rule focused, again, probably stemming from your background, whereas others might be more flexible, relationship focused, or more relaxed, right? and you can fill in a much longer list than even those, just to know that, hey, there's these differences, right? And so again, some of that just stems from naturally, some is your personality, some of it what you've experienced. So there's, don't have to, the whole point is just to recognize it, right? And so neither one of those is automatically right, and neither one is automatically wrong either. The kids are ultimately the beneficiaries, because those are gifts or strengths that each of you may bring. And so you could have a difference of structure and or flexibility while also having some routine. So that's the goal here. So one of the other reasons is you just simply have different personalities. Ed, why don't you hop in and talk about the next one?
Yeah. Just wanted to add in regards to personality differences. Some parents are naturally structured, some are naturally protective, others are rule focused, then others are, as Drew said, there's a long list. Some parents are flexible, some are relationship focused, some are more relaxed. Neither is automatically right. Kids actually benefit from both structure and warmth. I want to repeat that. Kids benefit from structure and warmth. So it's really, really important. And then you have stress and fatigue. When parents are tired, overwhelmed, or busy, small differences feel bigger. That amplification, when you're not at your best, you're tired, you're exhausted, the small things become big things. So sometimes the disagreement isn't really about the child, it's about the stress, time pressure, or feeling unsupported. Drew, anything you want to add in regards to what I just shared?
I think that aspect of stress and fatigue is very real, especially in today's climate and the stresses that we see externally in our world, but also, internally within our family sometimes, and the challenges of technology and what our children are consuming and their perspectives, and also these expectations that sometimes never really came from us, but they whether we're really falling victim to someone else's idea of what good parenting looks like or what we should be doing. And I think that often plays a lot into that. I have noticed, depending on the nature of the content that Kristen might be consuming on social media, or maybe myself might be consuming, it can somehow shift my perspective. And then it's like, yeah, I think I should be doing that more as a parent. And then I come in, maybe I haven't communicated that to Kristen, and then I just kind of respond, and she might be a little bit blindsided by it. So, being mindful of what's influences and with our stress and fatigue are impacting our how we see things in the home and how we then show up.
Excellent. All right, let's move to our next segment. And here we go. How parents build unity. And unity is a good thing. So, Drew, let's kick it
Yeah,
off.
let's alternate on this. Okay, I'll
Yeah,
go give one,
yeah,
you can give, and we'll just go through. Okay,
sure.
so we've got four. Then again, the list could be additional, but we're going to talk about these four because we think they're most relevant and valuable. Okay, so number one, I think this is crucial: have parenting conversations away from the kids. So many times I have witnessed, or maybe even been pulled into, a parenting conversation relating to parenting decisions that impacts the kids right in front of the kids. And, they're literally, kind of observers in a tennis match, you could say, kind of go back and forth, back and forth. And so that isn't the ideal. I think one of the most important rules you could have for yourself is make sure that you disagree privately. Okay. The reason being is that kids feel secure when parents show respect for each other in front of them. Now, you might argue, Drew, well, can't we disagree respectfully in front of the kids? And I think realistically, that's going to happen. But the goal might be to minimize the times that that does happen. And if there is a disagreement, that obviously is very respectful. And then maybe you can even reconvene at a later time away from the kids and just let the kids know, yeah, we've sorted it out for now, and we'll let you know the update afterwards or something, right? So that is, I think, one of the most important things. Disagree away from the kids, or have those parenting conversations that require you to work through some sticky points in private, and then come back and present to the kids after. Ed.
Another important point, focus on shared goals. So even if both parents' approaches differ, most parents want the same outcomes. I believe that. that they want kind kids, they want responsible kids, they want confident kids, and they want safe kids. And whatever the relationship is, ultimately you would want to be working on shared goals. Not, when you're Drew refers to John Maxwell a lot. And one of the first things I remember, John Maxwell, great leadership mentor of many, he said many years ago, when we work together, we win together. So having those shared goals, not only for yourselves, but especially for your kids, is really important. So instead of arguing about methods, talk about goals, talk about the end in mind, and then reverse engineer it. So instead of saying you're too strict, try, what are we hoping our child learns here? A different mindset in regards to what do we want the best outcome for the kids, and work from that. So I think it's a really important thing. Shared goals in any relationship, especially, partners, but also shared goals for the benefit of the kids in the end. Drew?
Yeah, the next one is to back each other up in the moment. I'm going to highlight in the moment. So you need to be prepared for this, because there are always going to be times where something may happen or something may be handled in a way that you might have done it differently and you felt it was really relevant and important. Uh, the goal here is to support your partner first. Okay. Then maybe in private, or just say, hey, can we talk about this in a little bit? Have the discussion afterwards and make the adjustments. And if there are adjustments that need to be made, then you communicate that together. Okay. When kids see parents supporting each other, it creates stability and trust. And I think this one's really challenging, especially that's why I highlighted in the moment. I am the type who tends to kind of, if I see something I want to jump in, I usually jump in. And so that's where I need to hold myself back. And that's why I say it. And I think a principle from John Maxwell that might be relevant here as well is, even in the moment, find the 1% that you can agree on that your partner may have done, and give it 100% of your effort and focus. Too often we get caught in the 2% that we don't agree with, and then we want to jump in and make it. So it's the 101% principle. The 1% you can agree on, and give it 100% of your effort or 100% of your focus in the moment, and then talk about the other stuff after.
Excellent. Yeah, and then the fourth of this section, appreciate each other's strengths. So many parenting differences are actually complementary strengths. So one parent may bring patience, emotional support, connection. The other might bring structure, discipline, problem solving. Kids benefit from both. They benefit. Again, going back to what I had said earlier, the kids benefit. We want to think kids first. So take those different strengths and funnel them to the benefit of the children. Each one of us is different. Even before you get into a relationship with your partner, everyone's different. There's no two people alike in the world. So take the strengths and work on how they can make things better for the children. Remember, we're here about the kids. We're here about the kids. So that's what I just want to end up on that one. Anything else you want to add before we move to our closing segment?
No, that's good.
All right. So finally, Drew has a message for dads.
I do. That sounds ominous. Yeah, maybe my message. Yeah, it does.
Oh,
it does.
Drew always has messages for dads. So, but I guess that my tone of voice made it a little bit, big.
Yeah, look, I think that, as dads, we can be the thermostat and not the thermometer when it comes to this idea. And so, meaning that we can help set the parenting temperature and set it at unity as opposed to division. And I think we could do that when we communicate very openly and respectfully, when we respect our partner's perspective, when we do stay engaged in the parenting decisions. And look, all those things, I don't think any dad would disagree with. It's the reality of how hard it is to actually do that sometimes. And so just want to acknowledge it's challenging. I'm saying that because I've lived both, unfortunately. I've lived a really unsavory, we'll say, home atmosphere in the relationship, and I've now lived a much more enjoyable, peaceful. Doesn't there's filled with differences and different and sometimes disagreements, but how they're handled and the way that we move through them is so much better, and it makes a huge difference.
Excellent. Good stuff. And Drew said there, unfortunately, I think it is fortunate because he has the lived experience to not only make himself and his family better, but a whole pile of dads, fathers, and male caregivers better also.
Well,
So
if I can say this, Ed, my hope for anyone listening would be that you don't have to go through that. So learn
true,
from my mistakes. And
true.
yes, fortunately that I can share
Yes,
from a lived place to say, here's what I would guide you to differently.
100%. All right. We covered today why parenting unity matters, and we backed it up with some research. We talked about why parents see things differently. Then we hit on how parents build unity, and then we close it off with a message for dads from Drew. So, key takeaways today: disagreements about parenting are normal and expected. And what matters most is how parents handle these disagreements. And then kids feel safest when parents show respect and support for each other. And then finally, parenting unity doesn't require identical styles, just shared purpose. So, as we close off today, I have a call to action for everyone's listening. If you and your partner sometimes see parenting differently, you're not alone. But the good news is that unity is something you can build. Start with one conversation this week about the kind of family you want to create together. So, as always, I want to say thank you so much, everyone, for taking the most important thing, your time, to hang out with us today. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and we'll chat with you soon. Be well.